Profiles in Black Miami has been chronicling the life and legacy of Alexander C. Lightbourne, a Bahamian-born immigrant who arrived in New York in 1866. From New York, Lightbourne migrated to North Florida, where he became a teacher for the Freedmen's Bureau, educating newly emancipated citizens of the United States from that region. Lightbourne became the Sergeant of Arms in the Florida Legislature during Reconstruction after the American Civil War. He was Justice of the Peace, appointed in Gadsden County by Governor Harrison T. Reed in 1871. It was in the town of Quincy in Gadsden County, Florida, where he met and married Mary Zeigler. Mary was born into slavery on the Zeigler plantation in the town of Quincy in 1856. It was in 1872 when Alexander C. Lightbourne, a teacher in the Freedmen's Bureau, a sergeant of arms in the post-Civil War Florida legislature, and a justice of the peace in Gadsden County, Florida, married Mary Zeigler, a formerly enslaved American citizen. In the 1890s, they moved to South Florida. Alexander C. Lightbourne would become one of the most influential African Americans needed to sign the charter to incorporate the then Fort Dallas settlement into the city of Miami. Historically, women and their contributions to groundbreaking events were excluded in the documentations of the successful accomplishments that they were a part of. Women like Julia Tuttle, the founder of the city of Miami, she donated the land that would be the cornerstone the city of Miami was built upon. Women like Charlotte Jane Stirrup, who worked shoulder to shoulder with her husband E.W.F. Stirrup and established a real estate dynasty in Coconut Grove. Women like Mary Zeigler, who with her husband Alexander C. Lightbourne came to Miami and were very involved in the civic growth of the historic community of Overtown. Mary, along with her husband, Alexander C. Lightbourne, were founders of Bethel AME Church, which still provides spiritual comfort in Overtown today. The first services were held in their home. Profiles in Black Miami first introduced Allison Lightbourne, the great-great-granddaughter of Alexander C. Lightbourne. She, as a descendant of Alexander C. Lightbourne, was in attendance when the city of Miami made a proclamation acknowledging her great-great-grandfather's contributions in the early days of Miami. Allison Lightbourne worshipped and joined Bethel AME Church during its 125th celebration in providing spiritual guidance in Overtown.
My name is Allison Lightbourne Jones. My great-great-grandfather is Alexander C. Lightbourne. I did not know this when I moved from Harlem, New York to Miami in 2015. I was driving around feeling drawn to the city, but did not understand why. In October 2019, My daughter sent me a text and said a woman was trying to reach me about my grandfather on my mother's side and to call her right away. She told me about A.C. Lightbourne and his important contributions to the city of Miami. At first I was shocked, but then it started to make sense to me. This feeling, this spirit that I could not explain, why I was so drawn to Miami. My roots are here, my people were here.
Profiles in Black Miami. Executive producer and historic researcher, Anne Marie Henry. Discovered the descendants of Mary Zeigler, Lightbourne, a family that is well established in Miami-Dade County. The family came together for the first time in the Alexander C. Lightbourne building on the Bethel AME Church campus to learn of their family's historic beginnings and contributions in the early days of Miami-Dade County. Joining the descendants of Mary Zeigler Lightbourne was historian and civic activist Dr. Enid Pickney.
Awesome.
So, quick story, we met through a work training, what, about a month ago.
Oh.
And then I recognized him when he pulled up. I met you before somewhere.
Are you serious?
And you know,
You see, that's why it's good to know your family.
it's crazy.
I know. I am a living witness.
She had a story that's crazy. Thank you, Zeiglers, for coming today. Why are we here at Bethel AME Church? We're here at Bethel AME Church because this is a church founded by Mary Zeigler and Alex C. Lightbourne. Yes.
Wow.
This was founded in March 1896 here in the city of Miami. So this church is older than even the city of Miami.
Wow.
So this is why you're here. This is your legacy. This is your great-grand aunt's legacy. On the last sheet of the printout that I gave you, I want to show you that your common ancestors are, for Allison, who couldn't be here today, and for you, is Nathaniel Zeigler and Margaret McFarland. Nathaniel Zeigler was an enslaver. Margaret was an enslaved person. So we're going all the way back to 1807 when Nathaniel Zeigler was born in South Carolina, and Margaret was probably born in South Carolina as well. She was born in around 1818. The first page is a picture of Nathaniel Zeigler when he was younger, and the second page is a picture of him older. In 1838, your great-grandfather, Robert Zeigler, was born in Quincy at the Zeigler plantation. And in 1854, one of the younger children for Margaret McFarland and Nathaniel Zeigler, Mary Zeigler, was born at that time. There's an age difference about 18 years. So on the 1860 schedule for enslaved persons, which is the fourth page that you have, on line number 16, and when you look at that, you see there's a 42-year-old female that's black. I believe that to be Margaret McFarland. So she would have been 42 in 1860. On the 23rd line of the Slave Registry, there is a 22-year-old male who's mulatto, and I believe that to be Robert, your great-grandfather. And on this next column, well, there are two 4-year-old females that are black, but I believe one of those to be Mary Zeigler. On page 5, we have the record of Robert and Chelsea, which is your great grandmother, getting married. They got married on July 22nd, 1866, and that would be the second entry on this page. On the 6th page, on the 1870 census, the first census after emancipation, we see Robert living with his wife Chelsea and their children, Robert Jr. You may recognize some of these names because they tend to use the same names over and over again. So Robert and Chelsea on this 1870 census has children, Robert Jr., Thomas S., Mary, and that's a Mary B., which is a child, Rosalie, and the sister, Mary Zeigler being the wife of A.C. Lightbourne. So on the 1885 census, the way that I certain that Margaret McFarlane is the mother of Robert Zeigler was that he's actually listed on the census with some additional children.
We'll ask questions later, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Not now. Okay.
Yes. So on the 1885 census, this is how I know that she's your ancestor, because she's listed as a mother. But let's go to page 7, and this is the 1880 census where we first see Margaret McFarlane, and she's married to Jacob McFarlane. It says here that she was born in 1818. Jacob, her husband, was born in 1815. It says Margaret is from South Carolina. Jacob, the husband, is from Georgia. So this is the first time that I see her. I don't know where Jacob was in 1870. I tried finding him, but maybe he was out of the state, or maybe they hadn't found each other. Because what happens after emancipation is that families are split apart, and they're finding their way. Some people never find their way back to their family, but some people did find their way back to their family. Maybe that was the case for Jacob and Margaret. We don't know, but I couldn't find him in 1870. So here's a little history on the AME Church in the South. It was founded in Philadelphia, but right after emancipation, the church, of course, came to the South. And so right after 1870, there was an outbreak of yellow fever. So then a lot of people, I guess they call it the Great Revival. Right after that, a lot of churches, AME churches, just sprung up in the South, and a lot in Florida, and a lot in Quincy, in that area. And one of the churches was the Quincy AME Church. This is on page 8.
Still standing.
Yeah.
Well, not in this form, it was rebuilt, but this is the original church.
Right.
And this church was built by your great-great-grandfather, Robert Zeigler. Yeah. And he also sat on the board of trustees for the church. That church was built around a little bit after 1870, and meanwhile, on page 9, we have a little history of what was happening with Lightbourne. A little south and to the east of Quincy is Tallahassee, and a young Bahamian migrant named Alexander C. Lightbourne is surrounded by a bed of politics.
Bahamian.
Yes,
Wow.
Yeah,
My mom's Bahamian.
I know. That was another one of the connections that I saw. I'm like, oh, a Quincy Floridian person added. Yeah.
Yeah, my mother's people were Bahamian.
Well,
Yeah. I'm sorry.
That's fine, it's fine. So he arrived here right after the Civil War and made his way to Tallahassee. And it's like I said, he worked in the Freedmen's Bureau as a teacher. He served in the Sergeant of Arms. And then he caught the attention of the governor of Florida, and he was the one who appointed him the Justice of the Peace for Quincy. So he moved in about 1871, and then he joined the Quincy Amy Church. So I'm sure that's where he met Robert's younger sister, Mary Zeigler. And they married in March 1872. On page 10 is a copy of the marriage license.
And they spell it like we spell it.
Yes.
A lot of people Z-I-E.
Oh, there will be
Yeah.
a million different spellings for your name, and it depends on who is recording your information, you know. Alex Lightbourne and Mary Zeigler moved to Jacksonville around 1888, and two of the brothers were already living there, Isaac and Robert. And it says here that Robert Jr. was a newspaper editor. Page 12. So we're not sure when your great-great-grandfather Robert died, but on the 1900 census in Quincy, Chelsea, his wife, is listed as a widow. So he died sometime before that. And Quincy, and they're living at the house on Jefferson Street, 148 Jefferson Street. I think it's a lot now because I couldn't find. That house no longer exists, but
It's on Highway 90.
it's on Highway 90.
Right, straight through Quincy.
Oh. Some of the family is still living there. So Mary B, the
Some
daughter,
of the family still living there?
well, in 1900.
Oh.
Yeah, not now.
Okay. Let's go back to 1900s.
So Mary B, the daughter, is living there. That would be Mary Zeigler, Mary E. Zeigler's niece. And Paul is living there, and Edith is living there. Oh, that's a granddaughter. So now page 13, a few articles that we found referencing Mary Zeigler was one in 1893, when she was returning to Quincy. She's living in Jacksonville at this time, but that paper says that Mrs. Mary E. Lightbourne and children left this morning for Quincy to spend the summer with relatives. Her son Alex, which is the oldest child for Mary and Alexander C. Lightbourne, he will remain in the city. And a little note about Alex Lightbourne Jr. He was quite brilliant too. He was, I think in Jacksonville, he was a principal at a quite young age, like at 19.
Wow.
Yeah. The story ended tragically, of course, because he died in a mental institution in 1921. But in 1902, Mary Lightbourne died, and this is the obit that appeared also in the Jacksonville Evening Metropolis. And it says, Mrs. Mary E. Lightbourne, who for many years lived in the city, died at her late home in Miami on yesterday at 10 a.m. The deceased was the wife of A.C. Lightbourne, who was prominent here in politics and the business circles. While Mrs. Lightbourne was a prominent member and lived a consistent and faithful Christian life, being known and loved by all who knew her. The deceased was a native of Quincy, Florida, and aunt of the Zeigler brothers, who were much affected by the sad intelligence of her death. She leaves a husband and 2 sons, Alex and Joseph, the latter being the doorkeeper at the New York Stock Exchange.
A lot of African American families need to really research their families. They need to research their heritage. So there's a lot of stories like myself that you do not know your great-great-grandparents or what they contribute to their surrounding neighborhoods or surrounding communities. But I'm glad that I know now. I'm glad that my daughter knows, and that my daughter will carry on the legacy of my great-great-grandfather.